You're listening to Cinematic Adventures, proud member of the Misfit Faction Media Network.
Good morning, Vietnam!
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
I feel the need for speed.
Road, where we're going, we don't need roads.
Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
Vices? We don't need no vices. I don't have to show you any stinking vices.
You make me want to be a better man.
Nobody puts baby in a corner.
I wish I knew how to quit you.
Love means never having to say you're sorry.
He's looking at you, kid.
Not bad. I'm just drawn that way.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cinematic Adventures. Don't forget, if you guys are listening to us on the go, you can find us on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, basically anywhere you get your podcasts. You can also find more of our content on our website, themisfitfaction.com. There you find links to not only this show, but some of our other shows like The Multiverse Fancast and MF Uncensored. And if you guys are looking for your book fix, you can always check out Bibliophiles Assemble online. Oh, wait. Anywho. So...
Oh, there it is.
As always, I'm one of your hosts, Paul. With me via the Zoom studio is Sean. Sean, how are you today?
I am wonderful, Paul. How are you?
I'm so fantastic. We got producer Melanie's in the studio yelling out suggestions, so it's going to be
one of those kinds of shows.
I am super excited, but I'm also excited because we're finally doing a spooky season episode during spooky season, because nothing says start the Halloween season quite like celebrating the 30th anniversary of Cool Runnings.
Hey man, you agreed to do the episode.
I will never stifle Sean's creativity. If he says he wants to do an episode, yes, I will never stifle it. I will always support you 169%.
Oh wow.
Yeah. My wife pointed out that it should be 269%. Because you need two to never mind. So anyway, we are back. Yes, we do apologize for not coming out with an episode last week. Unfortunately, scheduling got the best of mostly Sean, but you know.
Oh, whoa. I was ready to record on Monday night, but somebody had to do homework.
Yeah. Somebody's trying to, make themselves better. Trying to improve.
Are you though?
No, I'm so miserable. Every night I've been so miserable.
God.
Anywho. So, I'm also turning the computer because somebody's distracting me in the background. But anyway, so we are back, and I'm actually very excited. This is a franchise that has been around forever. Hasn't really done anything as of late. It's kind of been stagnant for a while, but it was...
Which is good.
It was one of the most iconic slasher... Oh my gosh. Slasher franchise around, like up there with Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street. We didn't do Nightmare on Elm Street either.
We did not. I don't think we've done Halloween as a series. We did maybe the first movie, but I don't know.
That series is too confusing for me right now. It's just...
Well, so is this series. All the series are confusing.
And also Michael Myers got beat up by a teenager, but, it's that, that sort of thing. But anywho. So we are talking, and also because it is in accordance, as of time of recording, yesterday was Friday the 13th. So we are talking the Friday the 13th franchise.
And to get a Friday the 13th in October is always...
Extra points.
Pretty cool. I looked that up, and it's usually about 11 years apart. So by guess, the last time this happened was 2000. I can do math. 2012.
Good job.
When we last had in October, a Friday the 13th in October.
When the world was supposed to end.
Math.
That was the year the world was supposed to end. The Mayan calendar was... Can you imagine, how when you're making copies of something and you
Can't trust them Mayans, man. They're always wrong.
Yeah, well, can't ask any of them anymore. But anyway. Imagine, you're making copies and you run out of paper, and 1,000 years from now, somebody saw that you ran out of paper, and they're like, oh my God, the world's going to end. That was the Mayan calendar. They just ran out of paper. So people thought that they predicted that the world was going to end. No, they didn't finish their freaking calendar.
That's a big calendar.
I know, right? Can you imagine? That's why I like our 12-month calendar. Just lather, rinse, repeats every year, and then every once in a while, hey, leap year. I think they should just give us leap day off. It should just be a national holiday.
Oh, I think a lot of things should be national holidays.
Yeah, I think anytime we want to record should be a national holiday.
There you go. Look at that.
See, I knew you'd get behind me on that one. But so for us, we are talking about Friday the 13th. And what are your first initial thoughts on the franchise?
First initial thoughts, it's excuse me, it's up there with Halloween as you could say the father of the slasher film, franchises. Fun fact, I mean, really when you go back and look at Halloween, the original, I mean, there's not a drop of blood in that movie at all. This movie was the first movie where the kills were over the top. They were bloody. They were gory. They were just unbelievable stuff that you had not really seen, except besides, I guess you could say the George Romero, the Dawn of the Dead movie. I think this is before Day of the Dead, and then a lot of Dario Argento stuff from like the 70s. So this was the first time American audiences were really shown over the top gore, really for the first time. And it really set a standard that still goes on today.
Now, did you watch the first one first?
Friday the 13th?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I was not allowed to watch Friday the 13th for a long time because obviously the franchise started, the first movie came out May 9th, 1980, directed by Sean Cunningham, written by Victor Miller, and produced by Sean Cunningham also. So that movie came out, we were not alive yet.
Nah.
No.
They were already into like Friday the 13th Part 5 by the time we were born.
Like Jason was about to take Manhattan pretty much when we were born.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. It really, when you think about that. Same thing with the Michael Myers films. I mean, they were all mostly in the 80s as well.
So for us, like we grew up and that franchise was pretty much like done almost. It was, it was when he goes to hell in 1993.
So I just have to cut you off a minute there. I just got a text from our mutual friend Matt, who is currently at New York Comic Con.
I got it too.
And he just sent me a picture of him next to the master John Carpenter. That's pretty cool. That's pretty damn cool.
Yep. He sent me the same picture. I just looked at it briefly. I was like, who is that sitting next to him? I'll check later. But yes, he is at Comic-Con. Producer Melanie got to go to Comic-Con this year. Her job actually sent her, which is the coolest thing ever. And
it's pretty cool.
I was not jealous at all, even just a little bit. But yes, she did make it to Comic-Con, so I'm sure at some point we'll discuss it. So going back to our actual topic, though, because we tend to segue like Paul Blart. Anyway, do you get that joke?
Yes, I got that.
Okay, because that's a layered, nuanced joke. It is not. It's very subtle, unlike those movies.
Very subtle, yes.
One day we're going to do those movies. I still haven't seen the second one.
I don't think we're missing much.
Hey. Kevin James is very popular right now with his meme. I don't know if you've seen the meme of him just standing in the kitchen from King of Queens, and it's just like hey. Like, the memes alone have been wonderful. Our podcast will not age well. In 10 years, people are going to be like, who's Kevin James? Ridiculous. So, this franchise, though, started, and unfortunately, the problem with this franchise for us, and I'll speak for myself, I'm not sure for you, Sean, by the time we realized what this franchise was about, you don't know that Jason's not the bad guy in the first one.
Well, you could thank Scream, the film Scream, for really informing audiences that maybe had never seen this movie before that the famous twist. And because when you say Friday the 13th, like if you walk up to 100 people right now and say, who is the killer in Friday the 13th, I guarantee you more than 75% are going to say Jason.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's because it's a trick question. It's the Friday the 13th, the movie, or Friday the 13th series. But truthfully, spoiler alert, Jason is not even in this movie. It is his mother, Mrs. Voorhees.
Mm-hmm. So she's actually, the bad guy of this, the first movie at least. And then she's a very prominent recurring motif throughout the series. So we aren't going to do each movie individually. We're going to talk about the franchise more as a whole. So, like I said, the first one came out May 9th, 1980. It did well for the most part, I think, on a budget of, let's see, less than $1 million, $550,000 they made this movie on, which is wild to think. It pulled in almost $60 million. That is like 100%, or no, what is it, 1,000% increase or like return, like something crazy like that. So obviously it did exceptionally well.
And it's also on the piggyback of Halloween. Now, Halloween was an independent movie. It was not picked up by any major movie studio.
Mm-hmm.
But after the success of Halloween, all the movie studios were like looking for the next Halloween, and Paramount got this movie, and it paid off dividends for them. I mean, it was huge.
Yeah, and then here's where I think the real issue of this franchise was. Once it struck gold, they wanted to keep it going really fast. So the second one comes out, and I want to say Jason doesn't even wear the hockey mask in the second one.
No, it's like a potato sack bag. And I think the hockey mask appears for the first time in 3.
Yeah. So that one came out almost exactly a year later, May 1st, 1981, on a budget of $125 million, because usually that's pretty par for the course for sequels, especially successful ones. They'll double the budget. It walked away with, $21.72 million in the United States, because it wasn't released internationally. So it still did fantastically well. Not as much as the first movie. That's very interesting, but that's because it wasn't released internationally. Then
basically these movies were coming out literally every year.
Yeah.
It was same thing with the Nightmare on Elm Street films. It felt like it was an event. Every year there would be a new Freddy or a new Jason movie.
Mm-hmm. Which is ironic, consider where the franchise does eventually go.
So basically, seriously, we were born in 1987. So on May 13th, 1988, less than a year after either of us were born, they were already on the 7th movie being released.
Yeah, because April 13th, 1980, or excuse me, I skipped one. August 13th, 1982, so a little bit more than a year on that one. Friday the 13th, Part 3, and then Friday the 13th, the final chapter, because that's one of my favorite things. Like Saw did that, and Final Destination, and all those movies, where it's like the final one until the next one. Because Saw and Paranormal Activity movies did the same thing, where every year it was like the Halloween event.
Yes.
Yeah, so then we got the final chapter was April 13th, 1984. A New Beginning was March 22nd, 1985. Let's see, Jason Lives, August 1st, 1986. New Blood, May 13th, 1988. So that was the first one where we were alive.
Yes.
Jason Takes Manhattan for the last 5 minutes of the film, July 28th, 1989. Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday, August 13th, 1993. Jason X, which I totally forgot about. That's really the first one that we were conscious of, that was like coming out for us to go see, because in 1993 we were too young to go see these movies.
Yeah, I remember Jason X coming out, and it was, you had heard the rumblings that they were going to be making Freddy versus Jason by that time, and I think Jason X was we knew was the next one was going to be Freddy versus Jason,
which came out a year later, August 15th, 2003, and then Friday the 13th, the remake, 2009. It was more like, it was kind of a remake sequel. Did you see it with Jared Padalecki?
I did. I saw it in theaters because I remember both of them. He did Friday the 13th, and then Jensen Ackles did the remake of My Bloody
Valentine. Yeah,
and I think they came out like months apart from each other. It was pretty funny that they both ended up doing remakes of slasher films. I mean, they were okay. They weren't great. And then they also did a remake of Nightmare on Elm Street, I think, like a year later after that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, with the guy from Watchmen.
Yep, and Rooney Mara, which I forgot that she was in that.
I like Rooney Mara. We got to one day talk about Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. But anyway, so go ahead. No, you go ahead. You go.
Oh, thank you. Oh. So I remember because you pointed it out, like Friday the 13th, the final chapter. But then New Beginning, I don't know if you've ever seen New Beginning. It is one of those movies that really doesn't belong in, like, kind of like Halloween 3.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's not Jason. It's someone pretending to be Jason. I always found that interesting. And then Jason Returns, the real Jason Returns, and Jason Lives. But, yeah, these movies were just... there's no excuses you need to make for these movies. They knew what they were. They were just quick moneymakers that, you know, the 80s audience just ate up. I mean, there's a great documentary on the Friday the 13th movies, and there's a great documentary on the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. Like, they go in depth into the making of these movies and just how low budget they were, how inventive the directors had to be able to pull off the kills. You know, the actors were paid very minimal. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can't speak for all of them, but like, obviously the biggest name in the first movie at the time was Betsy Palmer, the woman who plays Mrs. Voorhees. She was an actress who'd been around since the 60s. But lo and behold, one of the kids in the movie is a young Kevin Bacon. And that's like, you know, and his death is, I think, one of the more iconic moments in the movie, where the spear comes up through his neck. And like I said, I mean, it was for 1980. I can't imagine what being in that theater was like. That must have been insane.
What's a more iconic kill? Which kill would win in a fight? The kill of Kevin Bacon in Friday the 13th, or Johnny Depp from Nightmare on Elm Street.
Ooh,
I would go Johnny Depp on that one. I think that's the more iconic.
The Johnny Depp one is slower and it's more like
terrifying.
I think you also feel. I think you're more connected to the character Johnny Depp plays in Nightmare on Elm Street, whereas the Kevin Bacon character in Friday the 13th is really, none of the characters in Friday the 13th, in my opinion, are like, you don't know enough about them to really be related to them, or feel for them. They're just kind of like there to get killed.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the Johnny Depp one is more tougher to watch because you like the character so much. But yeah, that's a good one. I didn't think of that.
So let's talk about the characters of this. Really, Jason is the main character of this franchise. He's the iconic part of this franchise. When you think Jason, what do you think?
I mean, you think the hockey mask. I mean, if you truly know the backstory of the character, you know that he was, a child who drowned at the camp because counselors were not paying attention to him. They were off, having sex. And the mother goes a little batty and starts killing off all the counselors because she believes all of them are just only interested in having sex and not watching the children.
So, do they ever explain why Mrs. Voorhees thought he was dead, but he actually wasn't dead?
No, they never go. I don't think they ever go into that. Fun fact. The again, for all intents and purposes, when they're making the first movie, there's no intention of making a sequel.
Right.
I think originally the movie was supposed to end with her just in the rowboat, and that was it. But then I think it was Tom Savini, the fantastic makeup artist, who ended up doing all the effects of this movie. He came up with the idea because of the ending to Carrie, the jump ending of her reaching out of the ruins of her home and grabbing the girl.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, "Whoa, we should put something like that in the movie. Have Jason pop out of the lake. Do something or anything." So it was like, yeah, it was one of those moments that was only geared to just like terrify the audience and make people jump out of their seats. I don't know if they really had any intention of doing a sequel.
I doubt they did. Like I'm sure we can really quickly look that up, but I'm not going to because that's how confident I am in the fact.
And that's fair. I mean, look at Halloween. I mean, John Carpenter had no intention of making a sequel, but yet he leaves the movie open-ended like that. Like, duh. They're going to want to, if that movie's successful, they're going to want to do a sequel after that ending. Come on. I don't think any of them saw them making 8 or 9 movies of the same, guy, but hey, what are you going to do?
They ever explain anything about Jason? Like, I'm trying to look it up really quick, but they never really explain what why he's just like so supernaturally powerful.
Nah, they really never get into that. I never really looked that far into it to see if there's ever been real much explanation. I've seen out of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12 movies of not counting 12 movies plus the remake. I've seen 4 of them.
Yeah.
Like and Freddy versus Jason is pretty good because you do get a little. Because obviously the whole notion of Freddy getting into the head of Jason is an interesting topic, and you see a little, you go into a little bit of his backstory in that. But
yeah, I'm just looking it up. Like apparently Jason gets in. I want to say it was Jason Lives. He gets accidentally revived with lightning, and he just has supernatural powers now. He literally comes back from the dead with them.
It's like a Frankenstein,
Yeah. So. Because they tried that with Michael Myers. They constantly tried to explain his abilities, what he was, and why. Like, they talked magic. They talked all sorts of things. Sometimes it's better to just not explain it and just let the audience sit down and enjoy the movie.
Agree. I mean, there's I think in one of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, I want to say it was Nightmare 4, to bring Freddy back, they have a dog piss fire on his ashes. I mean, it's like, just, you don't... if you're going into that movie, just expect to just be like, I don't know how this is being done, but I don't care. I'm here for the entertainment. Now that's all it is.
Pretty sure there was one where somebody tried to kung fu fight Jason. I don't remember which one it was.
Kung fu fight Jason?
Yeah, like somebody actually tried to fist fight Jason, like kung fu style.
I'm sure there was, yeah.
It's wild, the things that
there's the great moment at the end of Jason Goes to Hell, Final Friday, where it's like he's finally dead, he's buried, the hockey mask is laying on the ground, and then all of a sudden, out of the dirt reaches Freddy Krueger because you just see his hand. and he pulls the hockey mask down to hell. And it was, I mean, that's 1993. That is 10 years before the movie actually comes out.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's how early they were like thinking of possibly, doing that, doing the two of them together in a movie.
Well, that was the height of their popularity.
And, oh, absolutely. 93 was, it was pretty much, both of them. And even Michael Myers, I think, was still going because you still had the Curse of Michael Myers to come out by that time, the one with Paul Rudd. But yeah, Final Friday was the last one for a while. And then came Jason X. And then finally, I think, honestly, really good is Freddy versus Jason. Like, it is, I mean, it there's not much to it. It's just to see those two characters on the screen together at the same time. It's it's up there with like Jackie Chan and Jet Li being in a movie together, even though it wasn't the greatest movie in the world.
I like that movie.
But to see the two of them on the screen, really,
I like the Forbidden Kingdom. I dug it. I dug it. Shut up, Sean.
Good, but for the two of them, that would be the only movie they're ever on screen together in. It just kind of was like could have been a lot better, but okay.
So here's the thing about the Friday the 13th franchise. It does follow a very, very strict formula for the most part. And it's basically Jason comes to town and Jason kills people. Like it does not have nuance. It's not subtle. It is literally subtle like a 7-foot guy wearing a hockey mask busting into your house is. But let's talk really quick, though. So after he dies in the final Friday, we do get almost 10 years later Jason X.
Yeah.
Now, Jason X, they actually send him to the future. I forget that they do this, that in the
Well, he was cryogenically frozen with no explanation.
No, he was revived with no explanation. They were doing experiments on him, and he got loose, and he spilled cryogenic materials on himself, and he was revived 400 years later.
Jeez.
Yeah, I was reading it really quick, but I did see most of that movie too when I was younger. Like I was never a big slasher horror fan when I was younger. Now I can enjoy them, especially like the cheesy ones. Like I will always say that like Halloween is still so good, and again, not an ounce of blood, like at all.
Yeah.
But
even the second one, I don't think there really was much blood.
No, I like watching these movies more as an adult now too, because like I get to see the details, like Michael Myers was driving the car around so that nobody like noticed. Stuff like that is fun. But so they also did a big redesign on Jason. Do you remember how they made him all futuristic looking?
Oh yes.
All cybernetic and like so very early 2000s. I'm sure that movie also had a killer punk rock soundtrack. Like I can't. It was a very 2002 movie. It's weird though that they did a movie that's changed his continuity so dramatically, like for the future, that they come out with now Freddy versus Jason afterwards. Like he has to survive.
He actually technically wins if you want to be.
So let's talk Freddy versus Jason, because I honestly it's probably the best one of the last 20 years.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
So, Freddy vs. Jason comes rolling around, and people were excited. This was also the beginning of the versus phase. Like, you had Alien versus Predators, another one that was okay. Mm-hmm. But, like, they also did a lot of these, like, in comic books. Like, they did Freddy vs. Jason versus Ash from the the Evil Dead franchise.
Evil Dead.
But it did well on a budget of $30 million. It walked away with 116. Like that's not bad at all.
I saw that movie in theaters. I mean, that was a fun watch in the movie theater. That movie.
Yeah, and it had a point to it. Like it had a story. Basically, Freddy is like he's not powerful anymore.
Controlling Jason
because he's basically lost his ability to scare people. Mm. And yeah, they end up going at it. And yes, Jason does walk away the victor, quote unquote.
But you get that little eye wink from Freddy, like he's still alive.
It's so good.
It's cheesy, but it worked. I mean, it's tough. I mean, that's a tough movie to make. I mean, how do you make that movie? How do you come up with a story to get both those characters into? I mean, they did it. They pulled it off, and some good kills, some good really kind of action in that movie. It did not disappoint.
Now,
and really minus the remake, that's the last time we really saw Jason on the big screen.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I wonder if there's any talk of them doing anything. I'm sure there's something
there's rumors of a possible reboot, but there's also a TV series in the works, a prequel called Crystal Lake that they announced at the end of last year. But obviously, with the writer's strike, I don't know what came of it. If it's still, according to Wikipedia, it's still in the works. And Kevin Williamson was going to write an episode of it. But
I'd be okay with that. It's just let's see some of the they wanted to do a lot of other things too. Like in 2009 they tried to do something. They wanted to do a sequel to the remake, but like the remake didn't do that well if memory serves correct. Like nobody was really
it wasn't that great. It really wasn't. Actually, I thought My Bloody Valentine was better.
All right, so let's talk about that really quick. Who would win in a fight of the slasher remakes? I will throw 4 out there. You let me know your thoughts. We have Friday the 13th.
Okay.
My Bloody Valentine. The Rob Zombie Halloween. And Texas Chainsaw.
I've actually never seen the Texas Chainsaw Massacre one, so
I couldn't think of a 4. Oh, wait, no. All right, so actually, let's take that out. We'll put in the Nightmare on Elm Street one that they did.
Of those 4, the Rob Zombie Halloween by itself, the first movie was actually not bad.
Yeah.
The second movie was so god-awful that it just leaves a bad taste in the mouth for the first one. But trying to be fair, the first one was pretty good. See, like, all 4 of those movies I've literally not watched since I saw them in theaters. Like, none of them blew me away enough to be like, oh, I'm going to watch this all the time. But I actually probably would say My Bloody Valentine. I think I enjoyed the most because I think it was also in 3D because it was during the 3D craze.
Yeah, and they did like actual 3D, like they shot it for like things coming at you type 3D.
They shot it in 3D. Yeah. That was probably my favorite of the 4 of them, honestly.
I like it.
And since then we've gotten the new Halloween trilogy, which it's just overkill. It really is.
It also ended on a whimper. Like they did not.
I know. The first one was so good. It was so good, and I knew it the minute walking out. I said they're going to make more, and they're going to ruin this.
Oh yeah,
and they did. They did.
Do you have a Jason kill that sticks out as one of your favorites? I know you mentioned the Kevin Bacon one.
Which one was it in? There's one where I can't remember if it was 2. I think it's in 2, where there's the guy and a girl are in bed. They're having sex, and he like takes I guess you could call it a spear. I don't know if it was officially a spear. And he literally like stabs it through the both of them.
Like a harpoon.
Like a harpoon, thank you. And it was an homage to Italian horror movie that did the exact same thing. But that one was brutal.
The first one that I ever saw that I always will remember is the 2 teenagers. Each one of these are going to start with the 2 teenagers were having intercourse. Because that's like the theme of these movies. That like, because for those of you guys who don't know, I don't know why you're still listening 30 minutes in if you don't know. But basically, Jason was quote-unquote killed because teenagers who were supposed to be watching, because I've worked in a summer camp. Sean, I don't know if you ever worked in a summer camp, but summer camp employees they're teenagers. Like,
oh, no, really?
Like, because they can get paid $4 an hour or community service hours and nobody will notice. But indentured servitude. So they're in a tent. And he wraps one of them up in either the blankets or the sleeping bag, and he just whips them into a tree and just starts bashing them again.
Yes.
Oh my God, that was the first one I ever saw. I remember I was young too. I think I walked in on like a family member watching it while I was supposed to be sleeping, and I was like, ran away. Never wanted to go to sleepaway camp. Also, further fun fact, I did go to like a day camp that was on a lake, and the counselors there would tell all the kids that this is where Friday the 13th was filmed.
Yes. What camp did you go? I think I went to the same camp because they had that too.
I'm 90% sure every camp counselor during the 80s and 90s told their kids that just to keep them in line.
Yeah, because I remember that too. It was like, oh, we're going to go see Jason or Freddy Krueger's house. I can't remember which one they said it was, but it was like just decrepit little barn in the woods, and they're like, oh, this is where Jason lives. And this is where. But I always like the kill in Freddy versus Jason with what's her name, the singer that was in the movie. I'm blanking on her name. Hold on one sec.
You can do this. You got it. Come on, buddy.
I think it's the girl from Destiny's Child, not Beyonce. The other one,
Kelly Rowland.
What?
Kelly Rowland.
Yes,
I got you. Don't worry, buddy. I got you.
Yeah. Where
the one from Destiny's Child that's not Beyonce.
There's 3.
She goes straight up to Jason in that movie, and like she's talking smack to him, and just stops talking, and he just looks at her, and he literally just boom with his arm, and she goes flying like 500 feet into a tree, and just she kills her right there. I mean, it was the dumbest kill in the world, but it was just so it was so funny. It really was.
I do enjoy when they make the kills kind of funny, or at least like try like they know what they're doing half the time with this. So like it's still
that was more in the Nightmare Elm Street movies where like the kills were really over the top and kind of
well, because the problem was you had to find a balance between the vibes of Freddy and Jason. They're two very different characters.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Because with Freddy, you have the comedy. Jason, there's nothing there. He's just a hulking Frankenstein that just has a machete.
It'd be like if Mike Myers did a quip at the end of a kill. What would Mike Myers' catchphrase be?
I always wanted them to do in Scary Movie, any of the Scary movies. I wanted someone dressed as Michael Myers with the mask, and they pull it off, and it's Mike Myers. Like, I thought that was the easiest joke in the world to pull off, and they never did it. I was
you know who did?
Who?
Robot Chicken.
They did that? Oh, I didn't know.
Robot Chicken did a skit where it was like all of the iconic 80s villains were living in a house together like Big Brother style. And at the end, Mike Myers pulls off his mask, and he's Mike Myers. Yeah, baby.
Oh,
yeah, like they do the whole thing. It's very funny. So it's interesting though, like we're talking about these iconic killers. There's really two types of these slasher killers. There's the funny comedic ones, like even like your Ghostface, he tends to be like sarcastic and dry humor. Freddy obviously is a very over the top kind of humor and goofy. And then you have your hulking just monstrosities like, Mike Myers or Jason, and then I think you could argue that the Texas Chainsaw Guy's kind of more in the funnier kind of cat, which is weird to say. Do you have a preference on your movie monster characters?
In terms of
like the funny, like slasher wise, like the funny quippy ones or the hulking monsters?
That's a good one. I mean, you got your Ghostface and your Freddy, which are in the same vein, and you got Michael Myers and Jason and Leatherface. I never watched any of the Hellraiser movies. I know nothing about the character.
I know enough.
I don't know anything about Pinhead. I mean, if you put a gun to my head, I'd probably say the funnier ones, maybe just because they toy with the characters more, obviously. Mm-hmm. Like, Freddy with obviously the humor, and then Ghostface with the trivia, on the phone and stuff like that. I think it's a little more, and then obviously, what's his name? Jigsaw does similar things as well with. So I'd probably say those are probably my go-to, only because again, they make it a little more, what's the word I'm looking for, stressful. And when is this person going to die? When are they going to do it? Whereas Michael Myers and Jason, it's just like, boom, you're done.
You're dead.
You're dead.
You're no longer alive. I don't know. Like for me, like I always think that those characters, like your Ghostface and like even your Jigsaw, they're just so much more nuanced. They have layers to them. Like say what you will about Ghostface, each Ghostface had a reason for what they were doing. Like it was warped and it was completely batshit crazy. But at least they had like Jason just kills because mommy killed.
Yes.
Mike Myers just kills because his not sister Lori is not his sister. Like they don't even explain it. Like he's just those kind of characters, they just do it because they do it. And again, I don't always need reasoning. Sometimes I can sit down and enjoy it and be like, hey, some people are just broken. And unfortunately, Jason and Mike Myers, they're just... Do you prefer them as more human type, just crazy, or like actually supernatural, like forces of nature?
Well, I mean, again, early on, they were just human type, but they've now really become just forces of nature to the point where like just nothing can kill them. Mm-hmm. So it's just kind of like, I mean, again, as I said at the end of Halloween, the new one with Jamie Lee Curtis, it's like we know he's not dead because he can't get killed. Same thing, because especially after H2O.
Yeah.
I mean, H2O had one of the best endings ever, and they just spit right back in the fans' face when they brought back Resurrection, and we're like, that BS explanation of how they killed the supposed Michael Myers. So at this point, it's just kind of like, they're beyond being able to get killed because they'll never stop. As long as these movies make money, they won't stop.
So what would you give the Friday the 13th franchise, Star City rating wise?
The whole series?
We'll go the whole series. If you want to
Probably give it a 3.
A 3 what?
3.5.
3.5.
A 3.5.
I
mean, it's good. It's nostalgic, really, to go back and watch it.
Mm-hmm. I can get behind the 3.5, especially during Halloween. Like, it's fun to watch. Now, here's a much more fun question: if you could do a crossover with Friday the 13th and another franchise, what would you want it to do?
Not Nightmare, because it's already been done.
That's the tough one. I think him and Mike Myers it would be boring, in all honesty.
Because there's no they don't talk, so there's no communication there. I mean, I'm trying to think of what other character you could plop next to him. I mean, maybe Jigsaw, but that just doesn't make sense.
Predator
would be interesting, but again, I mean, I can't think of it without thinking of how there'd be no story there unless somehow Jason is the good guy, because
that's the problem with these versus movies. Like, even like Alien versus Predator, they made the Predators the good guys.
Yeah, I mean, same thing with Freddy versus Jason. I mean, technically, Jason was the good guy in that. I mean, you felt more for Jason than you did for Freddy.
Yeah.
You know, even though Jason had no problem killing you, like the people in that movie were actually like, oh, we gotta help Jason because Jason's the only one that can kill Freddy.
You know, they did a crossover of The Ring and The Grudge in Japan.
Really?
Yeah, I was watching clips from it, and it was horrifying.
Oh God!
Those movies I can't sit. Those kind of horror movies I can't sit through.
Japanese horrors is too much for me. I have a weak stomach when it comes to that stuff.
I'll never not laugh though. And I think it's Scary Movie 3, where Anna Faris turns and the Ghostface kid is there and he's screaming, and then it cuts back and you see because she's got the lighter under his hand. Because like that stuff's very iconic. Like the Japanese horror, what they do, it's got its own very distinct look. Like I hate
Japanese horror is on another level. It's on another level.
Somebody at Comic-Con was doing a Samara cosplay where she's actually crawling out of the TV. Wow. Like they set it all up, and that is probably one of the scariest horror movie like notions of the last couple of years. Like the shot of her. That's another movie where there's no gore in it.
No.
But it's just
same thing with Insidious, Conjuring.
Yeah.
None of them have gore. It's all suspense. I mean, Paranormal Activity. As much as I despise those movies, you did like the first one. I don't know if
the first one. I saw the first 3, I think. But once they get to they found their formula, and people still watch them. Then they got really complicated. They introduced like witchcraft and time travel and all these things. The first one is still a solid.
Yeah, Blair Witch, I mean, is another one that's just, it's a movie that doesn't rely on gore. It's just, you know, there's nothing. Same thing with, you know, there's movies where we grow up and we're like, oh, this movie is so bad, it's got so much gore. Halloween was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the first time I watched Halloween and I was just like, there's no blood in this movie. Like, it's still good, but there's not a drop of blood. Same thing with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original. It's like, it's you or The Exorcist. You think you're going to see something, but you don't.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, and that's what makes the movie so good, is that they leave a lasting effect with you to the point where you're like, oh crap, this movie's terrifying, but you don't see anything.
I'll argue The Exorcist is still pretty gross.
Oh, there are more moments in The Exorcist that are over the top, but I mean, I remember walking in, like, people like would say about The Exorcist certain things, and I remember seeing in theaters and going like, that movie was great, but it's like, it wasn't as bad as I expected it to be. Like, I was more expecting like really over the top stuff, but you know, I prefer that, you know, as much as I don't mind gore, like, you know, like this movie, Friday the 13th. I mean, it's gore, you know, I want to say fun is not the right word, but like, you know, just kind of that over the top feel to it. But you know, you also like no gore. Sometimes makes the movie better as well. But
yeah, I'll agree with that. So before we end, are there any other like slasher movie characters that you would like to see crossover with any other mediums? I would honestly love to see The Exorcist. I know that wasn't a slasher one, but you just mentioned it, and I have to do it. Sam and Dean versus The Exorcist.
That would be good. You know what would be funny one? Not funny maybe, but would be Pennywise versus Freddy Krueger.
Oh, I'd watch that. I would watch that.
That would be interesting. They're both child killers, really, when you think about it, and it's very
the effect, like the psychological, like the imagery alone.
Oh God! And and in a perfect world, you'd want it to be the Tim Curry Pennywise versus the Robert Englund, Freddy Krueger, obviously. But I mean, don't get me wrong, Bill Skarsgård I thought was great in his interpretation of the character, but that Tim Curry Pennywise will forever
haunt
be
your
terrifying.
Dreams. Oh yeah, I'm with you on that. But
so good.
I would love like an actual like slasher villain battle royale movie, like in some capacity.
Yeah, Hannibal Lecter versus someone would be an interesting one too.
I think it would be much more fun if Hannibal Lecter like consulted on a versus.
Yeah.
Like, imagine if Hannibal, like in the middle of Freddy versus Jason, Hannibal Lecter appeared to quantify or psychologically analyze why Freddy was able to take advantage of Jason. Even if it's just for 4 seconds.
I know.
I would actually be okay if it was Mads Mikkelsen too.
Oh yeah, no, I think Anthony Hopkins is a little too old at this point to really pull off. Don't get me. He's a fantastic actor, and I think he can still make the character. But the character, you'd want the character to be, not. You want him to be fully there.
I'm with you. I'm picking up what you're putting down. Don't worry.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
We don't want to say it out loud, though.
The question is, though, I think, does many people even realize when Mads Mikkelsen even played Hannibal? That's the question.
That show has quite the following, apparently.
Really?
And apparently it was very good. I watched, like, the first episode. I just didn't really get into it. But especially because there was a little bit of a Hannibal Lecter fatigue at one point where they dropped, like, first they did the second Hannibal movie. I think it was just called Hannibal. Then they did Hannibal Rising. And then the show came out, and like,
then they did
Red Dragon.
Red Dragon was in there too. I forgot about Hannibal Rising when it was him as a younger man. I forgot about that movie.
Yeah, I think I watched most of it, and they try and do like a big twist ending to it, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's also kind of like Bates Motel for me. Like, I love the whole psycho, storyline, but for some reason I just couldn't get into the show.
Yeah, I struggled with the later seasons, even though it was still really good. But I did enjoy it, and the casting was so on point.
They made a show out of Friday the 13th, even though it had nothing to do with the Jason character. It was just an anthology series, which they did for both this and Nightmare on Elm Street back in the early 90s. They did like these, in the vein of Tales from the Crypt, that type of thing.
I'd be okay with like FX picking up something like this and doing it in American Horror style.
Well, now that the Variety anthology series is back in the popularity thanks to Ryan Murphy, you would think like, bring some, do a Friday the 13th or a Nightmare on Elm Street anthology series and get get them to come and do it, like kind of like the Crypt Keeper and all that stuff.
I'd actually be, I'd be really okay if they did like a slasher series. You can call it whatever you want, and like each season's a different one of those slashers, and then it does culminate, because American Horror Story did cross over eventually with their seasons, which was weird to begin with. Like, I'm not a big anthology type guy. I like my consecutive stories and my
Well, if it's for a full season, I'm good.
Yeah,
I watched that first season of American Horror Story. I thought it was very good, but it went way
too.
Way
they doubled down in the wrong ways.
Yeah.
But I would be okay if they wanted to do like some sort of serious like slasher film, like even like they could do a Ghostface too, like, and then just put it all in the modern times, and then end with it somehow crossing over, like that be your big thing of the season.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I wouldn't mind that.
But that is going to wrap us up. As always, don't forget, guys, if you're looking for more of our content, our website, themisfitfaction.com. You can find links to all of our other shows. You can find news, reviews, articles, and more. And don't forget, you can find us on all the social media. We're on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Just type in Cinematic Adventures or The Misfit Faction. Odds are you'll find some of our stuff. But Sean, this was a good time. I'm really glad you managed to fit me into your busy schedule.
I try, I still look forward to our talks, as much as
our little chat chits. But I think next week we're working on. Next week's gonna be the Underworld series, if memory serves correct.
Yes, sir. I'm looking forward to that. I just rewatched the first one, and I forgot how much I enjoy that movie.
It's pretty.
I like watching the second one probably in the next couple of days.
We're gonna have some thoughts.
The second one is actually The second one, I think, might even be better than the first one.
I was gonna say it, but I was gonna say that, but I wanted to save it. But now I can't. Yeah,
I do have to watch the newer ones. I still haven't watched the new. I have not been able to just sit down and watch the new ones for some reason.
We'll talk about it. But anyway, we look forward to having that conversation with you guys as well. So, as always, I'm Paul.
I'm Sean.
And we'll see you guys next episode.